Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our weekly COVID-19 all-staff meeting. This past week, we experienced an increase in the number of COVID-19 cases within the RHD community. Cases increased by 83 to a total of 515. Of the 83 cases, 42 represent patients and community members of our health centers and is reflective of the testing we are now providing at 4 of our Philadelphia sites. We are also seeing a lower number of cases develop for the most current week. Sadly, 6 people have died as a result of the virus. In addition, we lost several members of our community due to other illnesses and other causes during the past week. The numbers and the data that I share with you are real lives of real people we care deeply about. These are individuals we have supported, who gave us the privilege of getting to know them, who shared their lives, their challenges, and their dreams with us. These people aren't numbers, but cherished members of our community. And I know their incredibly dedicated and caring staff will miss them deeply. Quarantine and social distancing due to COVID-19 have necessitated changes to how we are able to say goodbye. Before this time, we would gather as a community to grieve and remember those we lost together. For now, we are not able to do this in the same way that we've done before, but we will continue to find a way to honor and memorialize those we have lost during this time, to respect the dignity and worth of every individual at all stages of life. We have begun thinking about what we can do as an RHD community to make sure the passing of any of our participants or our coworkers are honored and memorialized. Several suggestions have already been shared by staff. If you've been thinking of this or have ideas you'd like to share, please reach out to our clinical leadership at clinicalqualitygroup@rhd.org. My deepest gratitude goes out to our staff for the support they are providing to the folks we serve and each other during these extremely difficult times. During this difficult time, please reach out to Helping Hands or utilize the office hours provided by our clinical leadership for support. And let us remember that while we're not all in the same boat, we are all in the same storm. Let's continue to support each other and be kind to each other. This afternoon, we will be providing to you insight into our Getting Back to Normal plan. We will also be sharing other updates, and as always, leave some time to answer your questions. Similar to last week, we will be asking you questions, and as you saw, as you joined the meeting, we will be providing you with the answers to the questions we raised from last week. With that, I will pass the mic to Sean Mott, who will be facilitating our meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. As a friendly reminder, some of our housekeeping. You as a participant will only see the panelist view, and those are individuals who will plan to speak or follow up on questions that are posed today. Note that all lines are muted throughout this call. You do also have an opportunity to participate in this meeting through a question and answer period. This is a real-time question and answer process. You can submit your questions one of 3 ways. You can submit your questions directly through chat that is featured in this format. You can also send your questions to your voice. And you also have the opportunity to submit questions through RHD_COVID_19 at rhd.org. As Marco announced in his introduction, we've started a polling process to best understand if this process in this format is meeting your needs. Brian, if you could post the results again from the polling that was done last week. Just wanted to quickly review with everyone what we learned from our last meeting. Overall, we learned who's attending the meeting. We also learned that 90% of the participants who responded to the survey believe that it is a useful format. We also learned that 94% feel supported in this process. Finally, we also learned that the majority agreed we should continue to meet weekly. I want to thank you if you were part of the meeting last week and you participated in the poll, as this information has helped the planning committee to determine how to proceed. We noticed that our results from the first poll were fairly favorable, and we will continue to periodically monitor our polling to determine if we need to make any changes to enhance your experience. So again, thank you for completing the poll last week. And we will now do 2 questions for a poll for this week. Brian, if you could put up the polling questions for this week. The planning committee wanted to know, how is the question and answer process working for you? So we're now presenting 2 questions looking at the format as well as the intent of the questions and answers. If you could please take a moment to respond to the polling question that is now featured on your screen. I want to thank you if you took the time to complete the polling question. At this time, Brian, I would ask that you would close the poll. As a friendly reminder, we will tabulate the results, and at the start of next week's call, we will share with you the results of the poll, as well as how that information has informed what the committee will do going forward. At this time, I'd like to pass it on to Baroness Martin, who will talk with us about the Employee Domain Support Group. Baroness? I believe you may still be on mute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Baroness Martin, and I am the Vice President of Culture, Diversity, and Inclusion. And today I just wanted to start off with recognizing or shout outs, if you will, to a couple of our teams within RHD. We've been recognizing the hard work and successes of some of our program staff. And today we would like to recognize unsung heroes who work quietly and diligently behind the scenes, doing what needs to be done to keep RHD going and ensure that staff have what they need and continue to provide the services to our consumers. It is often easily forgotten when we think about these individuals and teams because they are not in the spotlight. Well, today I'd like to take a few minutes to shine a spotlight on these few people and say these few teams and say thank you for all the hard work you do. The benefits team continues to respond and to address questions, needs, and concerns related to the medical and other health benefits, unemployment, FMLA, and other leaves, COBRA, non-medical benefits, life insurance, disability, and other RHD benefits available to all our employees. And while continuing to complete new enrollments for newly eligible RHD employees during this time. The Learning and Development team continues to support RHD both programmatically and administratively in areas such as wellness and well-being, training and staff and development, team development, leadership development, and of course, group facilitation. During this particular time, the requests and needs of this team has dramatically increased from across the country, and they have rallied and risen to the demand. They have worked hard to respond to numerous requests from individuals, employees, as well as various programs and departments. The HR team is working tirelessly to respond to staff whose programs have been closed or had significant reduced operations, and those who have remained open and are continuing to provide service. They've been creative and responsive in addressing the need to continue to recruit and onboard staff to maintain program capacity and coverage, including the use of technology to interview, hire, and conduct orientation and onboarding. And last, but certainly not least, the payroll department. This team, a team of 10, are extremely committed, competent, patient, and diligent individuals who work hard to ensure that employees continue to receive their pay consistently and on time. They address questions about pay, deductions, and PTO. They process changes and updates for existing and incoming RHD employees. This team also works to provide quick, accurate, and clear responses to all inquiries and bring any outstanding issues to resolution. All of the staff of these teams have worked hard to meet the increased needs of each of the 5,000 plus staff across RHD. Each day they provide responsive customer service, despite also facing their own personal challenges, much like many of the RHD employees are doing at this time. They often do so quietly behind the scenes without requesting or requiring any public acknowledgement or accolades. And while we may not hear from them, we want to take a few moments to let them know we see them and that they're doing, and the work that they're doing and contributing to keep RHD going. Keep up the good work and know that your efforts are helping our staff country. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to give you a moment to just applaud them. The employee support domain updates we're a team that continue to creatively think about ways that we can continue to support our staff. We want to remind everyone of the different resources that are available to our employees. To name a few, we have the credit union, the DSIC team who's offering office hours. We have the Employee Relief Fund to date that has distributed over $16,000 to employees that have seen a reduction of time or has a closed program or partially closed program. And we're working on the employee sick donation time where we could help those that are not necessarily in need of funds, but are in need of additional sick time as they've been affected in this pandemic. So we'd like to thank everyone for all the hard work we're doing and continue to keep up the good work. Thank you, and I'll pass the baton to Christy Katz-Friedman.
Thanks, Baroness. Hi, everybody, I'm Christy. I have a couple of things I just wanted to remind everybody about, but I guess I want to start with thank you. Thank you for attending the office hours meetings. Thank you for sharing your experiences. My role is to go to these meetings and offer suggestions and maybe techniques on how to manage, you know, this new experience, the stress, but I feel like I take away each meeting a little something that helps me in my work or in my life or with my family. So I want to say thank you to everyone who openly shares what it's like, either on the front line, working in the houses, or working from your dining room table. So thank you. I appreciate everyone. I wanted to talk about two things today. Did everybody know that we have an RHD Facebook page and an RHD Instagram page? Because for me, I love looking at them. They don't get a lot of attention, but they're positive and they're good, and they tell me about RHD and they tell me about things that are going on throughout the country. And if Baroness doesn't tell me here, sometimes I don't get to hear some of the cool stuff that happens. So I do, I look. As long as you're not like a big freak and you're gonna put odd things on your Instagram page, come check out the RHD Instagram page or the Facebook page, because good stuff's about to go there. And I don't know, I like it. I enjoy looking at it. And my last thing is, don't forget yoga tonight, or kickboxing, or boot camp, or all the wonderful things that Baroness's team is now, you know, sharing with everybody. And keep calling me. I'm around, and I will speak to all of you soon. Am I passing this now to Susan? Sorry.
It's okay. Thanks, Christy. So hi, I'm Susan Hunt, Clinical Director in Behavioral Health and Housing. And I just want to speak for a moment on behalf of RHD's Trauma Informed Care Committee and the DSIC group and say that many of us have been worried about ourselves or our loved ones getting sick, or we know someone who has. And for some of us, we may have lost someone we know and love. We're all managing a lot of anxiety and uncertainty, both as we continue to work on site, from home, and on site. And as we look ahead to what the next phases of recovery will be. As this event stretches on, it can be natural for us to sort of let go or be a little less consistent with many of the self-care things that we started. Like putting in time for exercise, taking breaks, keeping to a routine, and most importantly, making sure you're staying connected with people who support you. It's so important to remember the things we do now are the foundation to hope and building resilience in the coming weeks and even months ahead. RHD's commitment to being a fully trauma-informed organization has never been more real and more important than it is right now. So that being said, I just want to remind and encourage everybody that there are many things happening around the corporation to help us support each other. So as Christy mentioned, the DSIC office hours meetings are continuing, and they are open for everyone. So if you haven't checked in yet, come on in, give it a try. It's just a place to get support and maybe to just even exhale for a minute with people who are going through the exact same things. We have different times and options, including an evening meeting on Tuesdays, which we just started a couple weeks ago. So you can find the Zoom info on the COVID website and the divisional newsletters that go out each week, or you can ask your clinical director when they are. Also, if you haven't already, continue to check out the many offerings from Wellness and Learning and Development trainings and the Employee Resource Committee that are all great resources to support us as a trauma-informed community. And finally, I want to give a shout out to the many, many other wonderful trauma-informed things happening in programs across RHD. Like, for example, programs are dropping off packages of staff's favorite snacks and games at residential homes, talking openly and compassionately with participants about the many feelings wearing masks can bring up, and all of the out-of-the-box creative ways that staff are keeping people engaged in residential or by telehealth. And these are really just a few examples. So from the Trauma Informed Care Committee and the DSIC group, we just want to encourage everyone to take a look at your emails, the COVID website, and to continue to reach out to your DSIC team members for tools, both for your own self-care and to enhance trauma-informed care in your own work. We're always posting new things. So I want to thank Emily Nichols for providing 2 great resources on trauma-informed care and dealing with the stress of COVID-19 for leadership as well as staff, and 40 Ways to be Trauma-Informed from Amanda Janulis. So I want to thank you to them, and all of these will be up on our site today. And also, please send us your ideas, keep them coming, of things that you're doing so we can share them out for others. What works for you and your program can definitely help somebody else. So you can send them to the Trauma Informed Care Committee at TICC@rhd.org, or the DSIC team, which is Clinical Quality Group at rhd.org. So thanks for listening, and just remember how important it is to keep on taking care of your own emotional health, staying connected, and being hopeful now and as we look ahead to reopening and creating the most resilient return that we can. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Shana Green from the Reopening Architecture Committee to talk to us some more.
Thanks, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shana Green, the project manager for the Reopening Committee. As Susan mentioned, we have all been going through a lot of feelings of uncertainty and worry, as much as we all want things to return to some normalcy again. As businesses begin to reopen, many of those same feelings may resurface and create understandable anxiety for many of us. So as RHD begins its planning for reopening, the Reopening Architect Committee will be focused on not only supporting programs and putting a plan in place, but also making sure that we are addressing the uncertainty as much as possible through our communications, forecasting what's coming ahead, and hearing from you as much as possible. Along those lines, we acknowledge that a return to workplace plan for programs and administrative sites, shared services included, cannot and will not be a one-size-fits-all. We also understand that this place will be a living document that will be subject to change as the need arises for each individual site. Today, we will share a return to workplace readiness tool that will help to highlight key issues most programs and locations will need to understand and start preparing for now before determining a reopen date. These key topics include workplace safety, recall procedures, service delivery, new roles and responsibilities, and more. The tool is formatted to serve as a base template for your specific site's return to workplace action plan. We are asking each unit director whose program that is currently closed or partially closed, complete this assessment, and that the CPOs and EVPs ensure that it is completed. This assessment tool is also for the shared services site. We're receiving feedback and meeting with the divisional and shared services leadership to maintain open communication and support around returning to work planning. Any questions related to this planning should be directed to the respective leadership team members within your division. Reopening dates for RHD programs, administrative sites, and shared services location will be based on the current status of the states they are located in. The goal is to reopen and to provide sufficient advance notice between 2 weeks and 30 days. As of today, there is no plan to reopen before June 8th. For health and safety reasons, we recognize that not everyone will return on the same day and that a phased plan will be instituted. We are exploring opportunities that will make all of our return to work a comprehensive, well thought out, and safe process. Again, please remember to share any questions or concerns relating to returning to workplace planning to your divisional and your leadership at shared services team members. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it back to Sean now.
Thank you, Shana. And thank you to all of our panelists today for providing us with information. At this time, we're about to shift to polling the final 2 questions of today to better understand how this is meeting your needs. Brian, would you kindly post the final 2 questions? As Brian is posting the final 2 questions, just wanted to also remind you that we're managing questions live. So if you have any questions from today, please send them through the chat or through your voice or the COVID-19 website. Thank you for completing the poll of the 2 questions. As a friendly reminder, we will tabulate the results from the poll and we will feature them at the beginning of our next call, which is next week or next Monday. In addition to that, you heard earlier that we welcome your feedback and your ideas. Throughout this weekly call, you get information about our response as an organization to COVID-19. Many individuals are planning, discussing, and looking at ways to move forward. And we also learn from your input. So at any time you have information you think would be helpful, or if you have suggestions that you believe will help support our efforts, do plan to use one of several mediums to connect. You have your voice. You also have the chat feature in this format. You can speak with your divisional leadership. So do take the opportunity to let us know what you're thinking. More importantly, suggestions you might have. Still waiting to see if there's any additional questions for today. At this time, I also would like to check with the panelists who are part of this call to see if there's anyone who wanted to expound on anything that was shared or provide any updates at this time. So we did receive a question, and it's regarding what Shana shared. And the question is, please confirm June 8th is the date. As a follow-up to what Shana shared, it was an indication that no reopening will occur before June 8th. Not to be translated that we will open on June 8th, but to be advised that nothing would occur before June 8th, and communications will be provided periodically as to the process. I refer to any of the other panelists to supplement or add to what I just shared.
Hi, everybody. This is Alicia. Alicia Smith.
Yeah.
Stephanie, do you want to take it or? Go ahead.
Either one of us. I didn't want to bump into you there. So I also saw a follow-up question related to that asked how reopening will be determined. Well, first I want to acknowledge that we have been operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So RHD never closed. We did have folks furloughed, but I just didn't want to jump into the answer without acknowledging the fact that many folks continue to work through all of this. And so don't ever want to forget that. The reopening is going to be determined using a number of factors. So we'll be using CDC guidelines. We'll be using federal and state guidelines as they relate to opening. And of course, we will always be remaining in touch with our funders so that we keep in pace with what is expected there. However, a very large part of what we will be using to reopen will be the assessment that Shana referred to as she was sharing information. That assessment will ask readiness questions, and I bring that up because it's very important to understand. I should say, in spite of earlier dates that may come up in your locality, we want to make sure that when we fully throw the doors open and come back to full operations, that we're able to do so safely. So some of the questions, for example, that Shana mentioned about having the proper equipment to take temperature, having the proper PPE, having sufficient mask supply to give to folks who may not have their own mask. So all of that will be taken into consideration to determine the safe date for your program to return to full operations.
The only thing I wanted to add, Stephanie, you kind of covered everything, is that I think it's important to remind everyone that oftentimes we hear what will happen, what will RHD do? And it's important to help everyone continue to keep in front of them that RHD is a 14-state, 5,000 employee organization. And so there is no one catch-all plan that possibly could even begin to cover the varying needs of RHD across the 14 states, as well as the varying funders and the types of service and the differences in space and facility needs. So it's important to just keep in mind that when we talk about the plan, we're not really talking about one plan, which is again why, as Shana and Stephanie both shared, there is a significant need for, a very important need for local leadership to complete the readiness assessment. Very much like when we began, they completed a business continuity plan, right? There was an emergency, there's a disaster recovery and preparedness and readiness plan. So very similar to that. It's going to need to take into consideration the varying services, the varying types of programs, as well as facilities and locations, state and local funders. So just keep that in mind. We will also be sending out a companion to that related to employee readiness. What will our staff need to be prepared to return to work? So all of this is getting prepared and will be coming out to you. So keep in mind and keep your eye open for additional communication. It is very important that you guys are reading your email and visiting the COVID-19 website, COVID-19 page of RHD on a regular basis so that you can remain current with the latest information in between your weekly Zoom meeting. So stay current on that and stay in touch.
The only thing I would add to what has already been shared is the need for us to continue to get feedback and insight from the community, from leadership as to what they see is needed and what may need to be considered as we develop the plan and its various components together. So keep your questions coming and keep your insight, continue to share your insight with your leadership so we can be as proactive as possible in developing the plan.
Right. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Alicia. Sarah, I am toggling between my laptop as well as my mobile device. Do you have a question available that you can ask for the panelist?
I do. Just give me one
Excellent.
second.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sure. So someone asked, the COVID-19 financial help is great, but how is the amount a person receives determined? I understand that people have been getting various different amounts from $250 to $1,000. So they're not sure if there's a set amount and how that's determined. So I think this is a good question for Baroness, because I believe this is about the Employee Relief Fund.
Thank you, Sarah. The employee relief amounts are determined based upon the need. There is a review committee that reads through each application and they make a recommendation on how much to be awarded. And then the second part of that process, the actual employee relief committee then reviews what the reviewers have sent in and make the final determination. So it is really based on the need of the individual and what they state in their application. I hope that helps.
Great, thank you, Baroness, and thank you, Sarah. Sarah, just checking to see if you or Tara received any additional questions.
I did. We got a question. How do I know who the representative is from my division or program that's on the COVID return to work team? So I think that's a good question for either Shana or maybe Stephanie.
I can take that. If you have any questions in terms of communication, you can reach out to any member of the return to operations plan. So you can reach out to Shana. I would select her as the project coordinator so that your question gets routed to the correct individual. But we're really working as a cohesive team so that if you have specific questions, feel free to share that with your supervisor. As I said, feel free to forward any questions any concerns or any needs of information to Shana as a project coordinator.
And we're also working very hard to make sure that all of the leadership has the same information that Shana does, so that when you're asking the question that your senior or your leadership, they're able to answer the question for you.
Just another point there, because as I was thinking about the question, trying to make sure that we're providing an answer, we are reaching out to various leaders throughout the process. So because there are so many parts and it is faceted and phased, we are reaching out to your leadership, and the expectation is that we would be getting input from all parts of our.
Can I add one more thing? I do think that the question, it speaks to a number of, I know my internet looks like it's a little choppy, a number of questions that come in periodically about, who do I go to? In general, whether it's about reopening, whether it's about hazard pay, whether it's about, my program's PTO plans. And I think that often what happens is, without understanding the divisional or service line structure that your program falls in, what happens is everyone reaches out to the shared services department that they believe might have answers. And I do think we do have an organizational structure that has leadership at different levels, all the way up to your chief program officers. If you're in IDD, that would be Brandon York. If you're in behavioral health, that would be Linda Donovan. And if you're in the health systems, that would be Emily Nichols. So I do think that it's important for everyone to understand, if you have specific questions related to your program, related to your service line, that those are also great places as well to go to get information, and probably more effective places to go to get information specific to your program or your state. As I think, we will all do the best we can to try to answer your questions. But oftentimes, I know in my experience, questions come in, and I don't know that employees always realize that there's 14 states and 5,000 people and 150 or 60 programs. So it's not always possible to know which program you're reaching out from or what even state you're in. So just to keep in mind that the purpose of that structure is to also help provide employees a place to go, a resource to go to when you have questions specific to your program and or your specific service type.
One other thing that I would just add to Alicia's description and sentiments there is that even amongst similar types of programs, if you're in different states, there's always going to be something that's a little bit different. So we, the committee, is really getting as much input as possible, making plans in conjunction with the programs. Like, this is a plan that is really very cooperative and informed in both ways, how we want to look at reopening. But to everybody's point, just reach out if you have any questions, and we'd be happy to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Alicia. Sarah, checking again one more time for additional questions that may have come in.
Hi, I have one
Yes,
question that came in for Marco. Marco, the question is from somebody who's been getting questions from her staff about incentive pay, and she's looking for any further discussions regarding this.
I appreciate whoever raised that question. It is an important topic that I know that we have been sharing with the community for a period of time that we have been working with. Know that we, again, appreciate all that our staff are doing during this time. We continue to evaluate our ability as an organization to pay additional comp, i.e. incentive pay, to our staff. It has taken a while for us, and I appreciate the patience of our staff for us to continue to evaluate what is a very complex process, because there are many variables that we need to consider, including making sure that we are really looking at the bigger picture in terms of all of the support that is needed at this time to really focus on the health and safety of the folks that we are supporting as well as our staff. So we are on the tail end of concluding, and we are planning to conclude this week with the hopes of sharing with the community next week where we are as it relates to incentive pay.
Thank you, Marco. Sarah, I realized that you also had a question that you wanted to pose.
I do. I actually have two. The first is how is hazard pay determined? I'm assuming that's the rate and who it goes to. I know, Linda, you've taken this in the past, but I'll open it if other folks want to also answer.
Sure. The hazard pay policy, we could probably share that out again so that everybody has that, but it is basically 3 tiers depending on the number of hours in the week that you are worked in a situation, any type of program that has been approved for hazard pay, that all of the conditions that were in the initial communication that would allow a program or person to be in that category. So the tiers are under 5 hours a week, between 5 and 20, and then over 20 hours per week is what determines the different amounts of hazard pay for that particular week.
Thank you, Linda. And Sarah, you mentioned you had a second question as well.
I do. This came from an employee who says, I am an employee who is at high risk. Are any extra precautions or considerations being taken for employees such as myself who continue to work but are not feeling completely supported as our programs start to move forward again?
I think you can
Stephanie?
get a few perspectives. I think you can get a few perspectives on this. So I'll just start us off, and then maybe Linda and Brandon might want to come in. The part of the question that I'd like to address is that if you are not feeling safe, or you are not feeling that the proper precautions are being taken, I want to encourage you to reach out to safety@rhd.org. That is something that we would want to know and we would want to address. So that part of it, I would encourage you to do that. June just gave a wave. Could you give one more wave, June? June is the director of risk, and all of those emails get reviewed and responded to by either June or Brian McHale, who is the corporate safety manager. So please share that with us.
Yeah, I would add we want you to be.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
Go ahead. Nope, you're good.
Okay.
So Linda, if you can go ahead, and then Brandon, you can go after that.
I'll go ahead. Yeah. All right. I would encourage people, if they are feeling unsafe, to identify what that is to their unit director, to their service line director, to the EVP and CPO of your division. Because there are some things that we can control and put different practices in place or different PPE. There's some that we can't. But let's identify it, starting with your unit director and up until we find a solution that is helping people feel safer.
Thank you, Linda. Brandon, did you have additional information to add or something different?
No, I think she hit it on the head. I mean, our goal is to make folks feel comfortable. Let me just say, you know, we want you to be educated, want you to understand the risks. And I did say no, didn't I? Here I am talking. I'm really sorry about that. But we want you to feel educated about the risks, want you to understand how we can make you safer. And we want to provide the right equipment. So as Linda said, as Stephanie said, please make sure your supervisor is aware if you have questions or concerns for you. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Brandon. And checking in with Sarah and Sarah again. Additional questions?
We have a follow-up on hazard pay, and that is around how we are handling hazard pay for on-call staff. Linda, I'm not sure if that's you.
Yeah, hazard pay applies to anybody that's working in that site, whether you're full-time, part-time, on call right now. If you're an RHD employee, it depends on how many hours you work in that particular week. We know that there's some settings where on-call people have really pitched in and done a lot of hours in that house. So again, it depends on how many hours in that particular week the house is approved for hazard pay that you work in that week.
Thank you, Linda. And Sarah, Tara, any additional questions?
None from me.
Awesome.
None for me.
So I want to thank, awesome, thank you. Just want to thank Tara and Sarah in partnering with me on getting the questions answered from our panelists. As a friendly reminder, we will continue to have Q&A processes during this call to understand what your questions are, what your needs are, and then respond to them real time. So I want to thank you for taking the time to share your questions with us today. Trust that you had information that was helpful. I also want to thank our panelists for fielding our questions and providing additional context. Barring no additional questions, I'm going to pass it back to Marco, who will provide us with our closing remarks. Marco?
Thank you, Sean. And again, I want to echo some of what Sean just shared in terms of thanking you all for your questions and thanking the panelists again to continue to share information with the larger community that we hope, and as you've continued to share with us through the polling questions, is helpful in answering those questions you have that allows you to continue to move forward feeling supported. I have 4 thoughts to share with you prior to us departing today, and they're not long, so no worries. So the first is really keep your questions coming. Right? Your questions really help us to know that we are addressing what needs to be addressed, knowing that we are, supporting you in every possible way that we can. So, keep your questions coming no matter what the topic is. The second is seeking out support. You've learned a lot today, you've heard a lot today around opportunities for support, whether it be through Christy Katz-Freeman and the work that we're doing from a well-being perspective through our clinical leadership, DSIC and office hours, or through our well-being and employee support committee headed by Baroness. Seek out the support that you need so we can understand and hopefully connect you to support that's available along the way. The third point I'd like to make and share with you is support each other. These are extremely difficult times. We're all working through this in a different way because each of our experiences are going to be a little different. Support each other, be kind to each other as you continue down the path, and work with us to get to the other side of this pandemic. And the last is have hope. Hope that we will do this. We will get to what is more familiar to us, what is closer to normal, and a moment and a time when much of the difficulty that we're currently working with is behind us. So I ask you to have hope and continue to work with us to move it forward together. With that, again, I thank you all for joining us, and I hope that you'll be able to join us again next week. Thank you.